All right, so we're going to be making a tier list today. Some people in chat wanted my opinion on it, even though I don't think my opinion is very relevant. I want to start off by saying I'm a Mythic player, sure. I've hit top 20 before, sure. But there are much better players out there whose opinions probably matter more than mine. Definitely matter more than mine. Icarus is one of them. Sir Salty is another great player. But yeah, let's start it out. Snow Angel. Snow Angel is Snow Angel's probably somewhere in the C tier. Like so the way that the game works right now is early game is king. So if your hero power doesn't do a lot of things in the early game, then your hero is probably not very good, right? And at least Snow Angel does a little bit of something. You end up getting a free unit. Sure. It's decent. Masking into it is probably not worth. I mean, maybe if you're level 6, you could maybe end up getting a good boy out of it, but it's so unlikely that she's just really not great. But she's definitely better than a lot of some of the other picks we're about to talk about. Beauty is probably something similar. I think I would also class Beauty somewhere around C tier. The main problem with her is there isn't a lot of monsters. You have what? Minotaur on 2. Excuse me. You have, well, what monsters are on 3? You have the Slay and the ranged unit, Shadow Assassin and Vampire. So like you can kind of try and build some things around her like that. You can do cool stuff in the end game if you make it to the end game with her, which is the hard part, right? You can do things like good boy monsters, which is actually really interesting. You can run like good boy slot 1. You obviously don't want Minotaur, but you can do like some Slay stuff. You can have Oni King working with good boy, which is kind of sweet. You can do interesting things like that with her. So sometimes masking into her late game is maybe a good option for you. It just kind of depends. Like I think she's very similar in power level probably to Snow Angel, maybe slightly higher. So like we'll keep it like this. So that looks fine. Mad Catter I think is probably really good. Probably somewhere in the A tier, I would say. I mean, his hero power just has value in the early game, right? Especially on turn 2, you have 3 gold. You spend 1 gold rolling, and you give 2/2 to a unit in your shop, which is sick. I mean, it's basically like you would play a spell to give a unit 2/2 permanently, right? In the early game, because that's insane. If you compare his hero power in the early game to this spell, I forget the name of it, but it's give +1/+1 to a unit, and if you win the brawl, it's permanent. Well, he pays 1 gold to give 2/2 to a unit, and it's permanent anyway, even if you lose the fight. So that's kind of how I compare it in the early game. It's very strong, right? Avella is interesting. I think she's still A tier, but she's definitely a lot worse than what she was. She's definitely a lot worse than what she was with characters like Fallen Angel and stuff in the game. Like she may even be B tier on my list. It's hard to put Avella in B tier because if you high roll on her, it's very good, right? It's very good. But strategies with Cat are interesting too. Well, while we're still kind of talking about both these, like obviously Avella is very linear. Like you look for the same things every time, correct? So we're taking black cats, we're taking any evil units to buff them up, any evil animals, yeah? It's very linear. Well, Mad Catter is a little bit more dynamic, and you can work around the things that get buffed. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. Carron is probably also A tier. Like once again, we're like compare these early games to each other, right? Like Carron is very strong. Carron is very strong, right? Because he just has innate value in his hero power. Of course, your units are gonna die at some point, so you're guaranteed to get value from your hero power. Compared to like Snow Angel or Beauty, where you're not always guaranteed. You're not going to see monsters 100% of the time on Beauty. You're not even going to see good units 100% of the time on Snow Angel. So, Horde Dragon's a little bit better right now because you can do round table tree stuff. So maybe B tier. It's like, see, this is another one where it's like you may just not have a hero power, which really sucks in the early game. It's obviously a big hindrance if you don't have a hero power, correct? Correct. Fates is also kind of similar to this as well, but it's a little bit, I mean, these may be B tier, but we're gonna leave them in C tier for now, because it's like you need to hit triples for your hero powers to be relevant, right? And even if you like hit a triple on like Fates, it's like not even that good sometimes. Like, yeah, you get +5 in stats, but sometimes you just get blown out by that, like by someone with a mad mem and a cat, a black cat, you know, just completely wrecks whatever upgraded unit you have. Whereas opposed to Galahad, on the other hand, which is more likely somewhere in the A tier, I would maybe put him probably in the A tier beneath all these. Maybe B tier. B tier is kind of sitting empty right now, but maybe that's okay. I think Galahad is quite good, right? Like, let's compare Galahad to Fates. Okay, so you hit one triple on Fates, you get +5/+5 on that unit. Now imagine you have a full hand and a full board on Galahad. You get +2/+1 to all of those. It's like 3 times as powerful as Fate's hero power, right? So even if you don't have direction, like just innately stat wise, Galahad is much stronger than Fate's, right? Gepetto, probably somewhere in the D tier. He's pretty bad, especially right now. It's just bad hero. There's not much to say about it, right? You find summons. If you don't find summons, you don't have a hero power. Even if you do find summons, it's like not even that good. Yeah, Gepetto's pretty bad. Jax Giant. Jax Giant's probably somewhere in D or maybe bottom of C tier. The problem with Jax Giants is his hero power falls off so fast. His hero power falls off very fast, right? Because 2 health in the front line is very good on like the first 3 turns. Maybe 2 turns. So it saves you some life. After that, you kind of don't have a hero power. 2 health in the front line doesn't do a whole lot. It does not do a whole lot. Okay, Grandma, D tier. Also not much to talk about. You don't have a hero power. You compare it to, like, let's say Fallen Angel, who is S tier in my book. This is pre-nerf. Nerf is coming soon, I'm pretty sure. So if you're watching this in the future, yeah, she may be a bit lower. We don't exactly know what the nerf's going to be yet, so. But let's compare Grandma to Fallen Angel like we did earlier in a game today. So sure, you get 10 extra health on Grandma, but you have to hit level 6 before you have a hero power, whereas Fallen Angel, most likely by 3-0, 3-1, you've already activated both parts of your hero power. It's very likely, right? Which means your board has +2/+2 at level 3 compared to, you know, Grandma's hero power. Not great. Not great. The 10 extra health ends up being irrelevant, right? Because you'd much rather survive the early game, like Fallen Angel does. Gwen, I think, is still very strong. Gwen probably is somewhere in here between Avella and Mad Catter. Maybe even above Mad Catter. Maybe even above this. Gwen is still very strong, especially with knighthooding. Yeah, there's just so many crazy things you can do with Gwen, right? Knighthooding Adventure, if you're already ahead. Just speed run to 6. You can knighthood the Wizard's Familiar on turn 1. You can even knighthood a Happy Little Tree, which is still slightly worse if you don't find damage buff for your tree, like Mim or the 3-drop treant that I can't remember the name. Darkwood Creeper to buff the Happy Little Tree. But then there's also other strong things she can do, like Princess White. Knighthooding Princess White is probably strong even up to like 3-2. It's still just so very strong to knighthood Princess White on Gwen. Alright, Curse King. Curse King probably fits somewhere here in the C tier. Maybe slightly above Horde Dragon. Probably above Beauty too. Maybe top of C tier right now. The main issue, he could be B tier actually. Let's put him in B tier. The main issue with Curse King is, yeah, Econ is very good in the early game. Econ is great, but you rely so hard on your shops. And if you don't get anything good in your shops, then yeah, then your econ means nothing if you just have a bad board anyway, right? Krampus. Krampus is probably B tier, maybe C tier, but let's start filling the B tier a little bit. We'll probably put him above Curse King, right? It's pretty good. Just he gets value if you find evils, right? He gets value if you find evils, which is way more likely than yeah, it's just way more likely than some of the other hero powers we've gone over. Sure. Loki is kind of a yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with Loki, as my chat knows, but Loki's interesting. I think he fits somewhere probably in between the A and the B tier, because the main issue is I'm actually going to put him high in the B tier, which may shock some of my chat. It's like high B tier, low A tier. The main issue is if you low roll on Loki on the first 3 turns, it's really, 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 really bad, because you don't get to pick your spells as your comeback mechanics. So normally if you low roll on other heroes, right? Like let's say we low roll on, I don't know, Galahad. We'll eventually find triples and our board will get buffed and stuff. But if you low roll on Loki and you take, you know, 10, 12 damage before you hit level 3, then it's like you can't really play spells or anything to help balance your board, and you're kind of at the will of what he wants to play, right? On the other side is, holy shit, he can high roll out of his mind, right? He can play shrink spell into eeny meeny, and into crazy stuff that gets you insane amounts of econ. He can play you XP for free, which is great. He can do crazy amounts of things, but it's just a double-edged sword. He has really low lows and really high highs, which is I think why he fits maybe at the top of B tier in my book. Mask is probably S tier. Mask is very strong, maybe even one of the strongest. I make him do this. Yeah, Mask is probably one of the strongest, because after you see who's in the lobby, you can kind of predict and build your board around who you're gonna mask into. Hitting Skip is obviously insane. Hitting Gwen is obviously insane. If there's no Fallen Angel in the lobby, you can start building around a Fallen Angel board, which it tends to be pretty good. Carries you through the mid game, and then you keep one. It Was All a Dream for the late game. When you hit level 6, you can mask into heroes like Morgan. It's just so good because you can pick heroes based on what your board is, and you get to choose, right? So you have the dreams in hand, which is, it's just a very, very strong hero. Very strong. Okay, Miss Claus. Miss Claus is obviously the antithesis of Krampus, and they're very, very similar. I think I'd rate Miss Claus a bit higher. Yeah. And Loki should probably be bottom of A tier, to be honest. He's A tier for sure. Just bottom of A tier, I think. And then Miss Claus, I think, is definitely above Krampus, because you get, I think good is just way better. You get units like Sure Shot in the early game, and having a 3/2 Sure Shot is really sick. Compared to like a 1/4 Mim, which is, yeah, okay, it's good. Having Cat is good, sure. But ranged is sick. Good units are very sick. Good Boy is very strong right now. It's just, I mean, good is good. Good is good. Merlin, I think Merlin we can probably squeeze in somewhere in the A tier. I think Merlin is probably a bit stronger than Avella. He may even be up here above Carron. I think Merlin is also very strong in the early game. Right? These are kind of similar if you're playing one spell a turn, but there's also things like Merlin plays double spell, you double buff a tree that you have on your board. It's like actually insane in the early game, right? It tends to fall off in the late game, but the thing with Merlin is you're usually so healthy in the late game, it doesn't matter. His early game is so strong that it gets you to the late game. Mordren, I haven't played, but he's definitely terrible. If I could add an F tier here, which I'm sure I could, but yeah, he's definitely like F tier. Really bad. Very good to mask into sometimes in the late game, but no, he has no hero power in the early game, which you struggle with. You'll take a ton of damage just because you don't have a hero power. Morgan's an interesting one, right? So if you think you're a strong enough player, Morgan is very good because you can just play best board, the best board you can get, and try and get as many levels as possible before you get underneath 20, right? It's like a race between your health declining and your XP increasing with Morgan. Yeah. It's interesting where to fit her in though. Maybe somewhere in the B tier. Probably above Curse King for sure, I think. Somewhere here in the B tier, I think. I'd rate her. Seems very nice. Also great to mask into, right? In the late game. So say you hit skip or something, you're on level 4, you start taking damage, sure, you take damage into the late game, you hit level 6, you're on like 12 HP or something, you use it again, you hit Morgan, you get a tier 6 treasure. Cool. Insane. Just good stuff. Good stuff. Huerte, haven't played, but also F tier. Definitely fit him somewhere in here. And he's maybe D tier. Well, we'll put him in D tier. Because there is last breath things you can do, but Mordren absolutely has no hero power until you have a full board, which is just terrible. Alright. If we're rating fun, which this is, I think, not fun, I would love to put Peter Pants in S tier, because he is so fun. He's my favorite hero. But skill level right now, Pants is not that great. Pants is probably pretty similar to these in B tier, maybe even in C tier. He's just really hard. The problem is, 1, he's hard to get first place with. 2, if you don't hit Hat Ball, your strategy is very narrow. Even if, like, obviously if you hit Hat Ball, your strategy is narrow as well. Yeah, I think he's probably somewhere in high C tier, which I hate to put him here because he's my favorite to play. But he's just not in a good spot right now. He's not in a good spot. Pied Piper, D tier as well. Probably slightly better than Grandma. Definitely worse than Gepetto. Maybe worse than Gepetto. Potion Master I think is pretty strong, somewhere in the A tier. Do we put Potion Master in the A tier? I think so, because this early game is the problem with Potion Master is you obviously need castable spells you can cast on your units, and if you don't find those, you don't have a hero power. But if you do find those, you're actually very strong in the early game, right? Because you can dictate where your hero power buff goes, which I think is very strong. Probably somewhere here, slightly under Loki. Very slightly, I think. Yeah. Pup is probably a C tier as well. Pup is another hero power that falls off pretty fast. Definitely better than Jax Giant. Fates, I don't even know if it's better than Fates. I would put Pup somewhere in here in the C tier. It is pretty good early game, but once again, if you're not finding the units you need, Baby Root, Mim, I don't know, Fanny and do dwarf stuff, then you're kind of SOL. You don't have a hero power, right? Kind of in the party with other people who may or may not have a hero power. Sad Dracula, I haven't played a lot of. I played maybe 5 or 6 games of Sad Dracula, and I don't honestly feel comfortable rating him because I'm not very good at him. I think he's actually very strong. I think he's probably somewhere in between A and B tier, but I haven't played enough to actually feel comfortable rating him. Okay, so we're gonna put him here so we don't make people mad when I put him here and they're like, oh, he's S tier, he's S tier, he should be S tier. So we're just gonna put him in haven't played because we haven't played him enough. I think that's fair. Pan's Shadow, probably also a C tier, near bottom of C tier, maybe even D tier. Uh, maybe like top of D tier. Let me think about Pan Shadow. Like it's kind of similar to Curse King, I guess. But Curse King is obviously more flexible than being forced to buy evil units, right? Like not having a hero power if you're not buying evil units sucks. Because what if you're given a shot with, no, let's just use an example that works in my benefit. A Sure Shot and a frog, right? A Lonely Prince. Obviously that's very strong. That's a very strong shot. But what do you do with that on this? Like, do you take the evil stuff over it because it's 1 gold cheaper, or do you take the much stronger stuff early game? You want to take the much stronger stuff. So it makes his hero power very awkward, in my opinion. Very awkward in the early game. And even in the mid and late game, it doesn't do a whole lot. Like 1 gold is so... It's just so you know? It's so Alright, Skip, I think, is very strong. I'm not very good with Skip, but I do believe Skip is very strong. Probably somewhere in upper A tier. Maybe even S tier. Probably upper A tier. I think these two are like actual champions right now. Crazy good. Skip is just very strong. You obviously start with an innate level bonus, 3 XP above everyone. You're able to do things like hit comeback mechanics. Like say you hit 5, you hit Mummy, and Mummy is very strong when everyone is still level 4, right? Because they're playing things like Vulture with 3 HP. They're playing things like Godmother with 3 HP. They're playing things like, I don't know, Summons, you know? Summons are very strong in the mid game. So it's like, hitting Mummy is very strong. Hitting anything that's good with a level advantage is good with Skip. So like Slay minions are very good with Skip, just because of your innate level advantage. Like hitting an early Vampire. If you haven't played much Skip, basically the early game plan is to get as much econ as possible. Finding things like Lucky is very good. Lucky is probably the best first pick for Skip, followed by the Prize Pig. It's probably a close second, just to get you money back, to try and catch back up to everyone who's 1 turn ahead of you, right? And that's basically the game plan with him. Get econ back, fill your board, be stronger, and try and stabilize, because you're always playing 1 turn behind. Trophy Hunter. Haven't played enough to rate him. I think Trophy Hunter can do some very cool things, but I think he's also probably somewhere in this area. Probably somewhere CB tier. But I'm not going to place him anywhere because I've only played him a few games. But I think he's very weak. I think he's definitely very weak. Somewhere in this area. Celestial Tiger. Well, Celestial Tiger... it's like similar to these, right? Hit triples, do things. You hit triples, you do things. Don't hit triples, you don't have a hero power. I think he's maybe slightly better than Fates. Maybe even better than Horde Dragon. Very close. Very close, I think. You can just do some very strong stuff, right? Tier 3 treasures are actually very good. Doubling tier 3 treasures is obviously very strong. Sarcophagus, one of the notable ones on 3. You can do Slay stuff on him. Buff your whole board with the 3-drop Slay stuff. You can do crazy stuff on 2 drops even. That's very strong. Okay. Yeah, like Runestone's treasure map, obviously worth noting on Celestial Tiger. Runestone's treasure map, very strong. Waddle. I think Waddle is also in the S tier. Very high A, very low S tier. I think he's extremely strong. Hitting triples early, being able to hit blind mice, hit tier 4 treasures, being able to hit 2 upgraded polys very fast. It's insane. And you can scale out of control very fast with him. I think he's slightly worse than Fallen Angel and Mask though. Zelhua. I have played some Zelhua. He's probably like top of the D tier here or something. Maybe C tier. maybe bottom of C tier. Let's put him bottom of C tier. Yeah, so Zilhua, you obviously you don't have a hero power until you're level 4, which is rough. But then he tries to come back with all the econ he gains from level 4 on. And it's sometimes hard. Sometimes very hard. So I think we'll keep him, yeah, probably bottom of C tier. And then Miri. Miri is like one of the high roll champions, right? I think Miri is probably somewhere in the middle of B tier, like here. If you high roll on Miri, it's very good. And you can get very strong very fast. You get an early Cinderella. You get an early Brave Princess on 3-0. Very strong. And you can scale out of control really quickly. Yeah. I think that covers everyone. This looks good. This is probably how I would rate everyone. The 3 we haven't played, I think are probably... I think Sad Drac is obviously maybe somewhere in A to C. I'm not confident enough to rate him, but Mordren and Trophy Hunter are definitely somewhere in this area, B and C tier.